This is the birth chart of Sam Hanken Goldberg, January 28th, 1982. Sam Goldberg was the fiance of Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Greenberg was found with over 20 stab wounds in her kitchen by Sam Goldberg. Sam Goldberg was never properly questioned, and Ellen's death was ruled a suicide. And today I wanted to talk about the astrological transits that were happening the day Ellen died. When we go through certain astrological transits, they have the ability to impact our personality, and we may act out in ways that are atypical. When we go through long-term transits, this can impact our personality for several months, and we may begin to act out in ways that are uncommon. The most impactful transits that we go through are Mars transits. Mars is the god of war. Mars transits can make us feel more irritable, touchy, aggressive, and violent. Sam Goldberg is an Aquarius, and the day that Ellen died, Sam was having Mars transit over his natal sun. So having his sun in the sign of Aquarius, Aquarius is naturally emotionally detached. Aquariuses are free spirits. They don't take kindly to restriction or confinement or any sort of traditional expressions of emotions. When we go through Mars transits, we don't always become violent and aggressive, though there's already a tendency for us to be emotionally detached, and frustrations have built up. When we go through a Mars transit, we may suddenly snap. Sam found Ellen with over 20 stab wounds. Now, if you were going to kill yourself, it would be nearly impossible for you to stab yourself that many times, especially because most of her stab wounds were found to the back of her neck and her head. Now, when you see someone who is stabbed multiple times, this indicates someone who was murdered in a crime of passion. Something overcame the other person, and they became more violent and aggressive. So the day that Ellen died, Mars was transiting exactly over Sam's sun. So Sam's version of the story is he had went to the gym, and when he returned to their room, that the swing bar lock was on the door. Now, Ellen had been suffering from amplified anxiety leading up to her death. And her fiance leaving the apartment, if you're having anxiety, yes, you probably would put the extra lock on because you're having anxiety and you don't feel safe being alone. So knowing that, Sam comes back to the room. He begins to text Ellen because she's not answering the door. And these were her texts to her. Hello, open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello, you better have an excuse. What the fuck? Ah, you have no idea. So clearly we can see there was no, are you okay? You're safe, it's just me. No, you better have an excuse. What the fuck? So this shows the state of mind that Sam was in that day and the way that he spoke to his fiancée. He was easily triggered and aggressive. Now, Ellen's parents had said that leading up to her death, that her behavior had changed. And because Mars moves pretty rapidly, we can go back and see where Mars was transiting in the weeks leading up to her death. So right around January 6th, Sam was having Mars transit over his natal Venus in Capricorn. So from January 6th to January 26th, when Ellen died, this Mars transit was becoming stronger in her life. And if we go all the way back to around Thanksgiving time of 2010, we can see that the planet Saturn began to transit over Sam's natal Mars in Libra. So when we go through Saturn transits, there can be more severity. There is a sense of punishment, limitation, and this oppressive judgment that we can feel. When we have Saturn transits to our natal Mars, it can also make us more insecure. We second guess ourselves, and we feel that there is more responsibility, and we are less able to express our anger or aggression or frustration in healthy ways. Now, Sam, when he was born, his natal Saturn was also in Libra, a few degrees away from his natal Mars. And since Saturn takes about 30 years to transit around the sun, we can see that this is the first time in Sam's life that he has ever gone through Saturn transiting over his natal Mars. Now, Sam's moon is in the sign of Pisces. And we don't know his birth time, so we don't have the exact degree of his moon. But his Saturn is making a quincunx to his moon in Pisces. Chris Watts, who killed his wife Shanann, also has Saturn quincunx moon. Casey Anthony also has Saturn quincunx moon. This aspect is commonly found in the charts of narcissists and psychopaths and killers, because it causes extreme emotional detachment, a disassociation from the emotions. Saturn is cold, and the moon is our feelings. And so when Saturn is an odd aspect to the moon, it causes emotional coldness. Now, not only does Sam have this by birth, he was beginning to have this by transit, because transiting Saturn was quincunx's moon as well. So this will tell us that when Ellen died, Sam was feeling less attached to his own emotional expression. Yes, he was feeling more aggressive in the heat of the passion, but true emotions not present. And Saturn began transiting his natal Mars right around Thanksgiving, so 2 months before Ellen had died. And so in that time leading up to her death, if your fiance is going through this Saturn transit, this Mars transit, Ellen, of course, would have more anxiety because her husband or her fiance is acting out in ways that were not typical of him. Now, I don't know Sam Goldberg, and I don't know how he was before these transits started. But when they did Ellen's autopsy, they found that she had bruises in different states of healing. So if you are going through a Saturn transit to your natal Mars and it's quincunx your moon, the one aspect of Saturn and Mars, because Saturn is the planet of control and severity, and Mars is our action and aggression, but also our sexuality. And so if Sam wasn't being physically abusive towards Ellen, the only other way to explain those bruises was perhaps he became more severe in the bedroom and wanted to introduce BDSM or some sort of control, domination, submission to the bedroom. On the other side of that, it could be that Sam felt insecure, and so insecure men will typically bully their partners in a way to feel more manly, more macho. And Ellen, she was a first grade teacher. She was a Cancer. She seemed so sweet. And Sam just seems like a fucking cold douchebag who got away with murder. Now, if you are not familiar with this case, I will link some videos below of some people that have gone over this case. I just wanted to talk about the transits that Sam Goldberg was going through the day Ellen died, to show that his personality could have changed leading up to her death. And the fact that he was never properly questioned, and that her death was ruled a suicide. And to this day, over 10 years later, her parents still have no closure. They know their daughter did not commit suicide. And Sam Goldberg went on to remarry, have kids. He works for NBC. So he's just been able to go on with his life. While Ellen's parents had to bury their only child and have never gotten closure. And nobody has ever talked about, well, what was Sam's state of mind that day? Sam's state of mind that day, having Mars transit over his natal sun. He was more aggressive, more easily frustrated, and more easily triggered. And if there was ever a time where we would act out of character and become violent, it would be when we were going through a Mars transit. Does this change anything? Can this be proven in the court of law? No. However, as an astrologer and looking into this case and looking into him, I can tell you that the day Ellen died, that Sam was more aggressive and more easily triggered and more prone to violence.